Robert Downey Jr. Kang's return to the MCU greatly hindered Kang, his intended replacement. Let's check out this news story. Folks, Avengers Doomsday's announcement revealed that Robert Downey Jr. will play the villain, Doctor Doom, famous for his role as Iron Man Tony Stark in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, as everyone knows. This confirms the film replaces Avengers Kang Dynasty, signaling Doctor Doom's imminent arrival. Sadly, Marvel Studios' actor choice wasn't well received, and for good reason. First off, you know the drill. Comment below if you think Robert Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom is a solid pick for the MCU's future. Don't forget to like and share this video link in WhatsApp and Telegram groups, especially to DC fans. Just kidding, but do share it. Thanks. Let's move on. There are several issues with reusing Downey Jr. as Doctor Doom, even with the explanations that some fans try to provide. While it makes sense to remove Kang the Conqueror as the main villain, doing so this way seems random and cheap. Even if the decision proves successful, it follows a dangerous nostalgia trend that may ultimately be insufficient to correct the MCU's current trajectory. Unfortunately, Kang the Conqueror ended up being Marvel's most lackluster villain. Before the announcement of Doctor Doom's imminent debut, the current MCU villain, Kang the Conqueror, played by Jonathan Majors, was supposed to be the next Thanos, acting similarly to the villain in the Infinity Saga. Reimagined from a time traveler to a multiverse-based villain, one of his variants appeared in the first season of Loki, which aired on Disney+, before the real Kang debuted in Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. What a disaster. This movie was intended to set Kang on the path to replace Thanos, but it actually harmed his future prospects. Quantumania was widely criticized and was a box office flop, being one of the first of its kind for Marvel, which was accustomed to anything billion. And besides Kang being defeated by ants, but hold on, I'm about to talk about that. One of the major problems with the film was showing a villain about to become the enemy of the Marvel Cinematic Universe being defeated and seemingly killed by the Avengers, one of the weaker Avengers. That's Ant-Man for you. This was made worse by the post-credits scene involving Kang's advice, which only made the character even more ridiculous. That is, it was a failed version. Although Majors was praised in his role as an actor, especially for his appearances as variants in the first and second seasons of Loki, this was not enough to save a villain who was already considered boring. Kang's never been a major threat, even in comics. The Avengers face him more as a nuisance than a real danger. Though I hoped it'd work out, I'm a sucker for time travel. Picking Kang to replace Thanos was iffy. Seemingly based solely on Major's villain performance, he lacked Thanos' menace and was basically beaten by TVA schemes in Loki Season 2. This became necessary due to the issues. I think Locke's post-credit scene was meant to set up Major's dismissal, who was already part of the process. He was later convicted and ultimately fired. In the end, TVA was already hunting other Kang variants, unbeknownst to some. This became necessary due to legal issues and accusations against Jonathan Major, fired from a now toxic role. With these problems, continuing Kang's storyline didn't make sense. Even die-hard fans lost interest in an easily defeated villain, and making him a threat to all Avengers seemed far-fetched. Comment below, did you like Kang? Should his story continue without the original actor? Could he be recast like the Hulk was? What about War Machine? Share your thoughts below. If he had an infinite number of variants, such a conflict would have no real impact and would just be an army of nasty villains. Many fans hoped that Kang's storyline would be abandoned in favor of another villain like Dr. Destino. Given that Fantastic Four First Steps is one of the upcoming MCU projects that recently started filming, switching to this villain would make sense for Dr. Destino, as Dr. Destino is the main villain of the Fantastic Four. Unfortunately, the way this is being done is kind of forced and desperate. He hopes it works. Do you agree that it wasn't organically orchestrated? It wasn't naturally pushed? Do you agree with me? Comment below. The choice of Robert Downey Jr. as Destino presents several problems. Casting Robert Downey Jr. as Destino is something that already seems problematic from the beginning and gets even more worrying when you think about how it will be applied. One of the ideas is that despite being called Victor Van Dool, this version of Dr. Destino would just be another version of Tony Stark with the same face. This would create an emotional impact for the Avengers, especially Spider-Man when he's unmasked. Oh, Dr. Stark, Mr. Stark. If he were to play the part, it would waste Dr. Destino's character and connect him too closely to the Avengers and Tony Stark. On the other hand, even though Dr. Destino is completely separate from Tony Stark, Robert Downey Jr. will always be associated with the role of Iron Man. Traditional and dedicated fans will always associate Robert Downey Jr. His iconic portrayal of Iron Man, especially his heroic death in Avengers Endgame. Any other actor could have played Dr. Destino, as talents like Cillian Murphy, the star of Oppenheimer, have proven online with various fan fiction images and more. He would have had the same level of acting as Robert Downey Jr. The problem is not within the MCU universe because it has the emotional connection to Robert Downey Jr., but Cillian Murphy has sensational talent. The fact that Robert was cast in the role after having already played Iron Man is seen by some as an act of desperation by Marvel. After all, the MCU has been declining in recent years with recent films and most of the TV shows, the Disney Plus series failing to recreate the success of previous projects or being harshly criticized. Only a few films have really stood out, and bringing back the face of the MCU to replace a failed villain may be seen as a sign that the glory days of the shared universe in the MCU have passed. No one doubts Robert Downey Jr.'s talent, especially after seeing him in various TV series roles, for example. In Oppenheimer, I've always felt this way. He left Marvel, and if he failed in various roles and returned to Marvel, it could be for money, but he went there, won an Oscar, and he's a billionaire. A billionaire. He's not coming back for money, although he's going to make a lot of money. It's money. He didn't even need money, nor did he need to prove himself. So he's really coming back because he likes playing Tony Stark, and now it's more of a challenge for him to play the biggest villain of the Fantastic Four, one of Marvel's greatest. It's not just any little villain, not the Mole Man or anything like that. Another explanation could be the fact that the MCU is currently in the multiverse saga, supposedly justifying this casting choice. Even so, wasting the MCU debut of a highly anticipated Marvel villain as a marketing ploy tied to a rejected concept is a mistake. Dr. Doom's legend deserves a proper adaptation, especially after being mishandled in previous Fantastic Four films. Though I'm saying all this to be controversial, right? I'm basically just bouncing my own opinions off each other. I think it'd be interesting, though risky, to have a Tony Stark from another universe who for some reason turned into a villain regardless of his name, knowing that the Tony Stark we're familiar with is egocentric. Iron Man's Tony was egocentric, dealt with weapons, and had questionable ethics. And even though he grew and improved, becoming a hero in Age of Ultron, he still wanted to put robots everywhere to control people. In the Civil War, for instance, he was on the wrong side. Captain America was on the right side. He wanted to control the crowd. So, seeing a Tony Stark from another universe, who's practically the same Tony Stark, but leaning towards the wrong side, and then turning into a big villain, which is Dr. Doom, who's exactly like Dr. Doom. He has several features, not from Tony Stark, but he has several features of Tony Stark. The guy's a billionaire, the guy's a genius. There's the matter of magic because he's science and magic and the like. I believe it can work out, but it's 89% risk and 11% chance of it working out. But it can work, and I'm rooting for it. Given all of this, it's clear that the decision to cast Robert Downey Jr. as Dr. Doom raises several questions about the future of the MCU. While Thanos was meticulously built over several years in movies, Doctor Doom seems to be hastily filling a void left by Kang. This, coupled with the fact that Downey Jr. will always be remembered as Iron Man, could harm the reception of the MCU's most anticipated villain. And you, what do you think? Is Marvel making the right choice, or is this a self-inflicted wound? Comment below. If you found the news interesting, like, share, and subscribe.